Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shaostoul, and this episode is to explain what programs you can use for modding Space Engineers. As with modding any video game, you can pretty much use whatever's available. However, I personally suggest that you use Blender, as I would be able to provide support to you, and there is also the wonderful plugin by Harag that actually allows you to streamline a lot of the process of modding Space Engineers and makes it so much more pleasant to do. You don't have to worry about fiddling with mount points and mirroring and other stuff like that. And it just makes life so much nicer. For other programs that you could use to 3D model, you could use pretty much any of them. I've used 3ds Max and I've used Maya, and they were okay. I felt they're kind of hard to use coming from Blender, but that's typically how it is. Pick your poison and go with it kind of deal. I have seen and have had other people use other programs to make a model and then put it in Space Engineers, and you just have to find some way to get the file type into Space Engineers or into Blender, and it's pretty easy for a lot of them. Blender supports a whole lot of file types, and there's not too many issues with a lot of them. If it comes to importing FBXs, you need to make sure that it's a binary FBX, as if it's an ASCII one, it's not actually going to import because it's kind of broken. But here's all of the file formats that you could actually get into Blender. So I've used, let's see, I'll start from the top. Let's see here. So there's the 3ds Max format, and I believe that's, what format is that called? I don't remember. I don't think that's FBX. I think it's something else. Oh, it's the .3ds. Okay. And then I've used the BioVision right here, the BVH. I've used a CAD or a C3D. I've not used any of these. The FBX format, again, if it has to be binary. I've used the DXF, I think, once or twice. This GIMP image to scene, I don't really use anymore, so you don't really need to worry about that one. Images as planes, more or less, it takes an image, puts it on a plane, applies the texture to it, so you have a pre-made plane that is UV mapped, if I remember right, with your texture. I've not done Lightwave. I've done Make Human. That's a pretty cool program. It gives you a bunch of sliders for making a human body in all kinds of different ways. I've used Milkshape. Milkshape 3D is a pretty awesome program. I know a lot of people that actually use it. I've not used Raw. I've used STL. STL usually comes from like when you're modeling for 3D printing. STL is usually the format that gets used a lot. There's OBJ right here. OBJ is really popular and is supported by a lot of programs. So if you're working with somebody else and they're working in a different 3D program and you need to get it to you, I suggest OBJ because that's the most likely one that you'll actually get into Blender or other programs. SVGs, I've used those. And I just recently used this virtual reality modeling language one, the VRML. And that was to make Rexar's logo for the circuitry kind of layout. And I've used this one as well, the X3D. So yeah, Blender supports a lot. I know Max and Maya support a lot. So it's just kind of pick which one you want. For image editing, I personally use Photoshop. I don't suggest GIMP anymore because it's outdated and not working very well with Windows 10. The plugin, I think, was last updated in 2008, so that probably does a lot for it not working in Windows 10 very well. I briefly tried Paint.net and Krita, and they seem to work pretty well. I believe they both export to DDS format natively, so you don't have to worry about any extra plugins or anything like that. You just have to make sure that you can export to the BC3 format or DXT5, which is the same thing essentially. Let's see. For text editing, Notepad++ is the easiest free alternative that I could think of. You could do it in Notepad. You could do it in a Word document, I'm sure, but Notepad++ has the numbering and everything. I'll load up one of my mods real quick so you can actually see what it looks like. So yeah, bringing this over here, you can see that it has all this numbering on the side, and you can actually collapse certain areas to work with it a little bit easier, which has been fairly handy in a lot of aspects. So that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. So 3D modeling, I personally suggest Blender because there's a lot that you can do with it. Harag is working on including animation support. So if you wanted to get into doing 3D models for the player character, or poses, or animations for like seats and waving and all that stuff, you'll be able to use Blender. I don't believe it's a released patch yet. I believe it's still a beta patch on his end, and hopefully it'll be released soon. The devs have been making changes to the animation side of things for the game, so it's broken a couple things. So Blender, awesome. 3ds Max, Maya, very powerful programs. They could be a little spendy. You can get the student edition, which I think comes with a 3-year license. Just keep in mind that you can get in trouble, possibly if you are selling models or doing videos which you're making money off of for tutorials and stuff like that, if they really wanted to pursue getting everybody with copyright issues that they possibly could, or non-licensing issues, whatever you'd call it. So keep that in mind. You could use Milkshape, you could use whatever you can get your hands on, really, as long as it gets to OBJ and you're able to export it as a FBX somehow, either going to Max or Maya or Blender and then exporting to an FBX, and then building your XML and your collision mesh with the HKT. I believe the collision meshes are only able to be made in the Autodesk suite of programs. I know Max, Maya, and then there's another one that I can never remember the name of. And then there's Blender that now supports it. And I think there was another one, but I haven't heard of anyone using that one. So, yeah. So as long as you can get FBX and get it into another program, if you want a collision mesh, then you're good. For image editing, don't use GIMP if you're using Windows 10. You're going to have issues with it actually exporting the DDS, which could bug a lot of people. It bugged the hell out of me, so I went to Photoshop. Photoshop works wonderfully. You just need to make sure you get the Nvidia texture tools, which is officially supported by Nvidia. Let's see, there's Paint.net and Krita, and I'm sure you can find other ones. As long as you're able to get DDSs and exporting to BC3 or DXT5, you are good. BC7 is the highest level of compression supported by DirectX 11. However, I don't know of any programs that allow editing directly of BC7 compression aside from Photoshop. But you can use the DXT5 BC3 for DX11 textures. And then text editing. So whatever you find there. I suggest Notepad++. And I've kind of rambled on and repeated myself a few times and hopefully answered questions that people keep asking me repeatedly. And yeah. Again, if you'd like to help me continue doing what it is I do, please be sure to like and subscribe, and check out my Patreon page through the link in the description below. All donations go towards me helping create more mods and videos, as well as helping more people learn to create their own mods, all of which is provided to you guys for free. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. You have a good one.